After completing my 10th class exams in 1979, my father suggested that I go and help my father's uncle and learns astrology. Mathematics being my favorite subject, I learned the calculations. My grandfather taught me how to calculate the inclinations of each planet and how to calculate the lagna and the meridian center MC. And he gave me some birth charts to draw. Thus, I learned how to draw the birth charts first and showed interest in predictions. So my grandfather told me some predictions, some of the tips that he usually uses for predictions, and after learning those tips I documented some of them. I verified with my father. While my father and my grandfather have laid the foundation for me to get interested in astrology, for almost a decade or 2 decades, I didn't show any interest.
Welcome to Shastikara's Astrological series. This is the second part for the Bihuru Chakra Paddhati topic. In the first part, I explained how you can use the Bihuru Chakra Paddhati for the natives whose time of birth is not known. That means just use the Bihuru Chakra Paddhati and assuming that the position of moon is in the same house for the whole 24 hours on the day the native was born. Then compare it using the Chandra Lagna. That was the first part. In this second part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the native's birth chart with whose the native's time of birth is clearly known, and then using Bihuru Chakra Paddhati how you can predict an event. To predict an event, in the part 2 I'm going to analyze the past events using the Bihuru Chakra Paddhati and justify why the event has happened with respect to Bihuru Chakra Paddhati, the ascendant, Vimsottari Dasa, and there's another technique inside the Bihuru Chakra Paddhati, which is you look at the Vimsottari Dasa, look at who is the Dasa Lord, Mahadasa planet, and that Mahadasa planet natal position, assuming it as the first house, and then you analyze the house based upon Bihuru Chakra Paddhati again. So here in this presentation I'm going to explain in detail, taking one or two examples. The first one is my own example, and the event was the 3 times that I had been abroad, and I'm going to explain how the event has happened with respect to Bihuru Chakra Paddhati. And the second one is something similar, an important event happened in a native's life, and explain just how it happened with respect to Bihuru Chakra Paddhati. I hope you will like this presentation too. As a first example, I'm trying to use my own chart and then analyze the past event using Bihuru Chakra Paddhati. The date of birth is June 10th, 1964, and the 3 major events that happened in my life is in the first event was I left to Dubai on April 26th, 1989. The second event was I left to Singapore on 3rd November 1993, and the third event was I left to US on 10th May 1994. All these 3 events happened during the Jupiter Mahadasa as per the Vimsottari Dasa system. So when I created the Bihuru Chakra Paddhati table using Microsoft Excel, the first event happened is on April 1989. That means Venus has activated the first house from natal position and the first house from its from the ascendant. And as I said, the dasa was Jupiter Mahadasa, and it was Saturn Antardasa, Saturn Pratyantara Dasa, Rahu Sukshmantar Dasa, and Moon Sub Sukshmantar Dasa. So that's the first event. The second event happened was between 29 age 29 and 30. That was in between June 1993 and June 1994. Two events happened. The second one was in November 1993. That is when during the Jupiter Mahadasa but Ketu Antardasa and Venus Pratyantara Dasa. The third event happened was in May 1994. That is just few months before, 1 month before my 94th, my 30th birthday. And that one happened, Venus activated the 6th house and Jupiter, same, Jupiter Mahadasa, Ketu Antardasa, but Jupiter Pratyantarasa. So by using this Behurug Chakra Paddhati, tabular and the Vimsotari Dasa system, I'm going to explain more in detail why these three events happened in my life during that period, and this is a way of learning how to predict a future event using Behurug Chakra Paddhati. Now that I explained the Behuru Chakra Paddhati events and the Vimsotari Dasa system, the first and the foremost, since we know the time of birth, the first and the foremost thing is to analyze the birth chart from Rashi Lagna with respect to the Mahadasa planet. Here for all the three events, the Mahadasa is Jupiter and the Antardasa is Saturn or Ketu. First of all, in the birth chart, Jupiter is the 4th and 7th house lord residing in the 8th house, and Jupiter is in the 8th house, and Saturn is the 6th house lord, 5th and 6th house lord residing in the 6th house. 6th house deals with employment conditions, with Saturn being the 6th house lord residing in the 6th house and having a direct aspect on the 12th house, indicates that the native, that's me, will be working most of the time. The employment conditions will be on working to a foreigner or in a foreign country, since it is directly looking at the 12th house, which is a foreign land. That tells you that the native will be working with a foreigner on a foreign land. There are situations where a native can work with a foreigner, but that can be in the motherland, means in the same country where the native was born. But in my situation, since Saturn is having a direct aspect on the 12th house, which is a foreign land, that tells you that I will be working, most of my career will be working with a foreigner on a foreign land. That's what the Saturn has clearly indicated here. Saturn's third aspect is on Jupiter. Jupiter is the 4th house lord. That indicates that Saturn is making the home life environment for me. He will be outside the country, that is on a foreign land. And the next thing comes is Jupiter. Jupiter is in 8th house. Its 5th aspect is on the 12th house, which is again 4th house lord residing in the aspecting the 12th house, indicates that the settlement of that particular native will be on a foreign land. And Jupiter's direct aspect is on the 2nd house, which is Kutumbasthanamu and Dhanasthanamu. And then Jupiter's 9th aspect is again on its own house, the 4th house, where Ketu is residing. So the reason why that second and third event happened during that Ketu's Antardasa is because Ketu is residing in the house owned by Jupiter, which is the 4th house, and we all know that Rahu is in the 10th. If Ketu is in the 4th house, Rahu will be in the 10th house. 10th house deals with career, and with Rahu being there, and indicates that the career will be, the native will be having an unstable career and might be moving from place to place, will have a change in the home life environment or change in residence due to career frequently. This tells you that from the Vimsotari Mahadasa, and when you look at the birth chart, this is how you can say that the three events, why it happened. And now comes the question is using the Behurug Chakra Paddhati. First of all, since June 1988, the cycle ruler is Venus. In the birth chart, Venus is the 9th house lord and the 2nd house lord, Bhagyasthanadipati and Dhanasthanadipati and Kutumbasthanadipati. All the three goes to Venus, and Venus is in the 10th house. So 10th house is career. So it tells you that the career, with respect to the career, the home life and the earnings will be with respect to the career from Venus only, and Venus indicates arts, entertainment, designing, or critical thinkings. With Rahu residing there, it tells you that the career will be very unstable. And then if you look at it, the Venus and Mercury had a Parivartana Yoga. Mercury deals with communications, economics, and mathematics, and that Mercury is in the 9th house, that is Bhagyasthanamo, and Venus, the lord of the 9th house, is in the 10th house. Mercury is the 10th house lord, and Mercury is also the 1st house lord too. So the 1st and 10th house lord Mercury residing in the 9th house indicates that the native's career will be something pertaining to communications, economics, mathematics, or anything that deals with numbers most of the time. And Venus residing in the 10th house indicates that it will be critical thinking or designing or arts, entertainment, or film industry, television industry. Anything that deals with those will comes under Venus. Rahu residing there in the 10th house makes the Venus very unstable. So that means both Venus is the 9th house lord and the 2nd house lord too. So indicates that because of Venus has co-joined with Rahu, the Bhagyasthanamo and the Dhanasthanamo will be dynamic, means it is not stationary all the time. You sometimes there will be issues with troubles with financial troubles, and then because Venus also deals with the Kutumbasthanamo, issues with the family members, all those things comes. And since Rahu and Venus, they both are having a direct aspect on the 4th house, there will be some sort of a instability in home life environment. Now coming to the Bihuruga Chakra Paddhati, this is what Venus does it. Now be precise using Bihuruga Chakra Paddhati. Venus activates the 1st house. Venus is residing in the 10th house, it is activating wherever it is. So that means career. So that's the first reason why the native had got his first job and left to Dubai. Okay, and then Venus activates the 1st house from Rashi Lagna. The 1st house is Mercury, owns the Mercury, that is the self. So Venus, when it has activated the 1st house from Rashi Lagna, it activated the native. So the native's career, there was a change in native's career. And now the question comes is, Jupiter is the Mahadasa. So what is Jupiter doing here? Jupiter is in the 8th house from Rashi Lagna and 12th house from Chandra Lagna. So when you look at just like Venus activated the 1st house from Lagna, Venus activates the 1st house from the Mahadasa Lord. The Mahadasa Lord is Jupiter, so wherever Jupiter is residing, it's getting activated. Jupiter is residing in Aries, and Jupiter is the Lord of the 4th and 7th houses, and it is residing the 8th house from Rashi Lagna and 12th house from Chandra Lagna. So when Venus activates the house that Jupiter Mahadasa is running, the 1st house, the 12th house from Moon indicates a foreign settlement or a ability to, or a chance opportunity to go abroad. And the 8th house deals with travel too, because from 7th it is the 2nd house from 7th. So 7th house is short-term travels. So from 7th to the 2nd house, 8th means short-term travels resulting into financial gains, Dhanasthanam. That's the reason why it happened over there in 88 and 89. Then comes there was a short visit in November 1992. From November 1992 to February 1993, I was in Singapore just 3 or 4 months. That was my second job. And Venus activated the 5th house from its natal position, which is the 2nd house from Rashi Lagna, its own house. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Venus has activated its own house, which is the second house from Rashi Lagna. Since Venus has been co-joined with Rahu, it became a functional malefic. Because it has co-joined with a function with a malefic, it has the malefic impact, and because of that reason, when it activated the second house from Rashi Lagna, which is the sixth house from Chandra Lagna, sixth house is employment conditions, second house is Dhanasthanamu and Kutumbasthanamu. So there was a change in employment condition, and that has resulted in some sort of disturbances in financials, Dhanasthanamu, and family environment. And that was a very short period of time. Then again in Jupiter Ketu Antaradasa, that is May 1994, Venus activated the sixth house. This is the most important thing in my life here. The sixth house is the third house from Rashi Lagna, which is Scorpio. It has nothing to do with it. As far as Venus is related, Venus has activated the sixth house from its natal position. But if you look at it, it is the same sixth house. Saturn's 10th aspect is again on the same sixth house. So when Venus activated the sixth house from Rashi Lagna, Saturn's 10th aspect is on the third house, and that Saturn, being the sixth house lord, has activated the third house status. And then comes the question is, what is the speciality of this third house, which is Scorpio? From Chandra Lagna, Scorpio is the seventh house lord, seventh house, so it's a short-term travel. And then since it is still the same Jupiter Mahadasa running, from Jupiter, if you look at the sixth house from Jupiter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth house from Jupiter is self, is the first house, Lagna, Virgo, Mercury, so self. So Jupiter again has, because of the Jupiter Mahadasa and Venus activating the sixth house, has activated the first house by the Jupiter, the Dasa Mahadasa lord. And when sixth house is activated from the Rashi Lagna, it is again Saturn is the sixth house, and Saturn is the sixth house lord. And again, as usual, Saturn has got activated. Now if you overall look in between the year 1994, before June 1994, Saturn's 10th aspect is on the third house from Rashi Lagna and the seventh house from Chandra Lagna, which is Scorpio. That's the house that Venus has activated from its natal position. And then the sixth house has been activated from Rashi Lagna, where Saturn himself is residing, and that is the sixth house is employment conditions. And then the sixth house from Jupiter Mahadasa, where Jupiter is residing in Aries, so the sixth house is Virgo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, sixth house is Virgo. So Jupiter has again activated Virgo. Virgo is the first house for me in my chart, and it clearly tells you that because of this Venus activating the Scorpio house, Venus getting himself activated, Saturn being activated, Jupiter being activated, the first house lord Mercury, first house got activated, in turn Mercury got activated. This all tells. And Ketu is the Antardasa. Ketu is in the fourth house, getting a direct aspect from Rahu and Venus, indicates that the need is all the reason why I had left the country for the third time. I got a job in US and left the country for the third time and came to US in May 1994. So if you know the time of birth, and then using the Bihurug Chakra Paddhati, and this is how you analyze the events. First, with the cycle roller, whatever the house that the cycle roller is activating. Second, whatever the house from Rashi Lagna the cycle ruler has activated. Once those two are done, the third important thing to be checked out is who is the Mahadasa in Vimsottari Dasa during that time, and then look at the same house from the Mahadasa's natal position and see, will that, by getting that house activated, will there be any event that can happen because of that reason. So there are 3 steps to be done. First, look at the house that the cycle ruler activates. Second, look at the house that the same house that is getting activated from Rashi Lagna. Third, look at the same house number that is being activated from the Mahadasa law planet, and then consolidate all that information, and then you will get a clear picture about what type of event is possible during that Behuruga Chakra Paddhati 1 year period.